So Jamie's next question, I'm going to read it here off of my cell phone. Her next question is, what is one thing that you would go back and do differently if you could? That's a really good question. That's one of those make you think type questions. And I would say that I have made some mistakes in my life. I haven't always trusted God when I should have, because He is always faithful. But I wouldn't necessarily say that I would go back and change anything because those mistakes I made or those times when I didn't trust Christ and I could have and should have, that made my eyes a little bit more open to experiences of others around me that perhaps have made the same mistakes that I made, or it makes me more aware of my weaknesses and my need for Christ's strength in those weaknesses. So I know it's difficult to look back on our lives and say, well, my goodness, I made that mistake. I wish I could change this, or I wish I could change that about who I am. Because everything that happened in my life up to this point, I'm 35 years old, folks, so everything that's happened up to this point has made me in part who I am. And God has placed me in a sphere of influence, whether it is at an office environment, whether it is writing Christian fiction, whether it's right here in my own home and focusing on the lives of my husband and my children, or whether it's being in an environment where other people are affecting me positively. So being around my family or being around my wonderful sisters in the Lord, being around my church family, those people also have me as part of their sphere of influence, and they are daily influencing me and changing me in different ways. It's a lot like when you think about reading books, and this is an exercise that I like to do often when I go visit schools and talk to school children. I like to be kind of mean, play teacher for a few minutes, and I give them a pop quiz. So the first thing I do when I walk into a classroom environment with children is I will say, okay, if you're interested in becoming an author, let's see how much you know about the Christian fiction industry or about the fiction industry itself. And so I'll ask them a question and say, okay, who can tell me the last 10 books to win the Nobel Prize for literature? And you hear crickets in the room, and most kids kind of their eyes kind of glaze over, or they look at you with a question, what is this lady talking about? So I say, okay, let's see if we can do a little bit better on the second question. So the second question is, please tell me the top 10 books on the New York Times bestseller list right now. And you'll get some students who are able to answer some of those books, some of the books that are really hot at the moment, but again, they're not able to really pinpoint that full list of 10. And so I usually say, okay, well, let's go ahead and see if we can redeem ourselves with this third and final question. And the question is, if you can, go ahead and name the top 10 books that have had a profound impact on your life. And that's a little different. And the point of the exercise is to say that society, that culture will tell us what books will impact or should impact our lives. But in all actuality, it's for different reasons. It's the different books that come into our lives at different times, maybe when we're struggling, or maybe when we're just joy-filled, or we're having growth in some way. It's those books that come into our lives, and we're a different person for having read them, for having experienced them. I have my own top 10 list of books that have impacted my life, and they did come at those different times. And so to go back and say that I would change something in my life, yeah, there are some mistakes that I wish I could say, I wish I wouldn't have done that. I wish I would have thought harder or longer or trusted God more deeply in those situations. But I'm grateful for my failure and for my weaknesses and for all of the times that I have stumbled and just fallen flat on my face, and God was right there to pick me up. And I know if you look at life in a timeline, I can go back and see all those times in the past where He's been there. And I know that in the future, there are going to be all those times that I'm going to do it again. Going to fall flat on my face, and He's going to be right there to pick me up. So in answer to your question, Jamie, if I could go back and change one thing, it would be nothing. It would be in the future, I'd like to change my weakness, and I'd like to exchange that for Christ's strength in my future choices.